Liam Bennett hunched over his desk in the cramped efficiency apartment, squinting at alien syntax on his holographic display. The blue-tinged light cast harsh shadows across his features as he muttered translations under his breath. 6 months on Xylos, and the Cthar language still tied his tongue in knots when he attempted its complex tonal shifts. The bureaucratic document before him, some mundane trade regulation, swam with characters that seemed to deliberately rearrange themselves each time he looked away. As a trained Earth linguist and cultural anthropologist, Liam had expected his position at the Interspecies Communications Bureau to be more intellectually stimulating. Instead, he spent his days translating the endless paperwork that fueled the massive bureaucracy of Xylos, the bustling hub world where thousands of species converge to trade, negotiate, and jockey for position in the complex dance of galactic politics. Still, even this mind-numbing work was preferable to what he'd left behind. Earth, once verdant and vibrant, now struggled under catastrophic climate collapse. Coastal cities submerged, agricultural regions transformed to dust bowls, and billions displaced, all within a single generation. When the Cthar Diplomatic Corps had established their Earth embassy and begun recruiting humans with specialized skills, Liam had seized the opportunity. The dominant Cthar civilization controlled nearly a third of known space, their technological prowess and rigid social hierarchy allowing them to maintain order across dozens of worlds. Though humanoid in general form, the Cthar were unmistakably alien. Tall, lithe figures with iridescent scaled skin that glowed with bioluminescent patterns when they experienced strong emotions. Their society was structured around genetic lineages, with an almost religious devotion to genetic purity that bordered on obsession. Liam knew the basics. Birth rates among the Cthar had been declining for generations, with a mysterious form of genetic infertility spreading through their population. Despite their advanced science, they had yet to identify a solution. Their response had been to double down on genetic screening, arranged pair bonding, and increasingly desperate reproductive technologies. Somewhere in his mountain of signed documentation, rushed through during orientation when he was still struggling with basic Cthar script, Liam vaguely recalled something called the Cultural Integration and Procreation Initiative, CP for short. He'd been told it was standard inclusion in all work permits, a formality for cataloging genetic information for their vast databases. Nothing to worry about, they'd said. Liam rolled his shoulders and glanced at the time, nearly midnight. With a sigh, he closed the translation program and stood, stretching muscles stiff from hours of inactivity. A shower and sleep, then back to the same desk tomorrow. Such was life on Xylos, predictable if nothing else. The sharp, rhythmic knock at his door startled him. Visitors at this hour were unusual, particularly for a low-level human translator whose social circle consisted mainly of other Earth expats and a few friendly alien colleagues. Identification, he called, approaching the door cautiously. Administrative Officer Lyra Kvex, Central Registry Division, came the clipped reply, the universal translator only partially softening the distinctive Cthar click consonants. Liam hesitated. Central Registry rarely conducted in-person visits, especially at midnight. Still, refusing an official Cthar representative was a quick path to bureaucratic hell. He pressed his palm to the scanner, and the door slid open. The Cthar female who stood in his doorway made him step back involuntarily. Unlike the subdued office workers he encountered daily, this Cthar exuded authority. Tall even by their standards, she stood nearly 7 feet, with deep indigo scales that shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed along her temples and neck. Her eyes, vertical pupilled and an unsettling amber, regarded him with cool assessment. "Liam Bennett?" she asked, though it clearly wasn't a question. "Yes," he replied, instinctively straightening his posture. "How can I help you, Officer Kvex?" Her lip curled into what might have been a smile on a human face, but on hers looked predatory. She stepped forward, uninvited, forcing him to back further into his apartment. The door slid closed behind her. "You've been matched with me, human," she said, her bioluminescent patterns flaring briefly. "Your romantic duties start now." Liam blinked, certain he'd misheard. What? Lyra tilted her head, studying him with a mixture of arrogance and unexpected curiosity. The Cultural Integration and Procreation Initiative. We've been genetically matched as compatible for reproductive pairing. She circled him slowly, like a predator assessing prey. You are smaller than I anticipated, but the genetic markers are unmistakable. There's been a mistake, Liam said, finding his voice's shock gave way to confusion. I never agreed to any reproductive pairing. Her bioluminescent patterns flickered in what he recognized as amusement. Of course you did. Section 27.3 of your employment contract, subsection regarding genetic sampling and potential integration services. She pulled a slim device from her belt, projecting a holographic document into the air between them. His signature glowed at the bottom. I was told that was standard procedure for health monitoring, Liam protested, scanning the document. The legal language was dense, even in translation. It is standard, Lyra agreed. Standard procedure for identifying potentially compatible genetic material to address our population concerns. She deactivated the projection. You have been selected for the honor of contributing to the continuation of a noble Kthar lineage, mine. I don't want this honor, Liam said firmly. There must be a way to decline. Her patterns shifted to a cooler tone. Refusal would constitute breach of contract. Your work permit, residency status, and right to remain on Xylos would be immediately revoked. Her eyes narrowed. Earth is still accepting deportees, I believe, though conditions in the refugee sectors are challenging. The threat hung between them. Return to Earth meant joining the billions scraping by in overcrowded climate refugee camps. No job, no resources, no future. This is coercion, Liam said quietly. This is contractual obligation, Lyra corrected. The bonding process must begin immediately. Initial bioscans, psychological calibration, cultural exchange protocols. She removed another device from her belt. Physical compatibility assessment. Liam stepped back. Wait, I need time to process this. Processing time was included in your orientation period, she said dismissively. Please remain still for preliminary scanning. As the blue light of the scanner washed over him, Liam felt trapped in a nightmare. Lyra's attention remained fixed on the readouts, her interest clearly in the process rather than the person. She seemed entirely unbothered by his obvious distress, focused instead on collecting the data points that would inform their bonding process. For the next several hours, Liam endured a series of increasingly invasive scans, samples, and evaluations. Genetic material collected, blood chemistry analyzed, neural patterns recorded. Each procedure performed with clinical efficiency by Lyra, whose occasional comments centered entirely on procedure rather than comfort. When it came time for the psychological evaluation, Liam saw an opportunity. The mind probe technology, a fine mesh cap of neural sensors, required verbal responses to a series of questions posed by an AI evaluator. Drawing on his linguistic training, Liam began crafting answers that were technically responsive but semantically ambiguous. Describe your ideal reproductive partnership, the monotone AI voice requested. One based on mutual consent and shared goals. Liam replied carefully, noting how Lyra's attention shifted slightly at his emphasis on consent. Define optimal genetic contribution parameters. Parameters that respect individual autonomy while acknowledging collective benefit, he said, deliberately using Kthar philosophical concepts that emphasized both personal and societal obligations. The questioning continued, and with each response, Liam inserted subtle linguistic ambiguities and cultural references that would be difficult for the AI to parse without human, or Kthar, interpretation. He noticed Lyra watching him more intently now, her bioluminescent patterns shifting into configurations he couldn't interpret. When the evaluation finally ended, Liam was exhausted but felt a small measure of satisfaction at having introduced at least some noise into their data collection. Lyra studied the results with narrowed eyes. Interesting, she murmured. Your responses indicate greater complexity than typical human subjects. She looked up at him. Your file indicates linguistic training. You have deliberately employed semantic ambiguity in your responses. Liam kept his expression neutral. I answered truthfully, according to my understanding of the questions. Her patterns flared briefly. Indeed, perhaps that explains the unusual compatibility readings. She stored the devices methodically. Cultural exchange protocols will begin tomorrow. I will return at 0800 hours. Prepare yourself appropriately. After she left, Liam collapsed onto his bed, mind racing. He needed help, information, anything that might give him leverage in this impossible situation. With trembling hands, he activated his secure communicator, a modified device gifted by a sympathetic tech worker months ago, and sent an encrypted message to the underground network known as the Mismatched. The group, comprised of both humans and Cthar, dissidents who opposed the increasingly draconian genetic policies, operated in shadows, sharing information and occasionally helping those targeted by the more extreme elements of Cthar bureaucracy. His message was simple, CP matched. Urgent assistance needed. The response came faster than he expected. Zalter contact established. Proceed with caution. Data collection phase critical. Appear compliant. Await further instructions. A secondary message provided an encrypted channel to someone called Zalter, identified as a low-level Cthar technician with access to CP databases. Liam sent a brief message explaining his situation, then tried to sleep, knowing tomorrow would bring new challenges. Lyra arrived precisely at 0800, now dressed in less formal attire though still unmistakably official. The cultural exchange consisted of a rigidly structured series of questions about human societal norms, reproductive behaviors, and emotional bonding practices. Explain human pair bonding rituals, Lyra demanded as they sat across from each other at his small table. Liam chose his words carefully. Human relationships are built on emotional connection, shared experiences, and personal choice. We don't typically approach reproduction as a separate function from partnership. Inefficient, Lyra commented. Genetic compatibility should determine pairing, not transient emotional states. And yet, Liam countered, human societies have thrived for thousands of years with this approach. Emotional connection creates resilience in family units, improves offspring care, and contributes to social stability. Lyra's patterns shifted to an intensity he hadn't seen before. Stability through emotion? A contradiction. Not at all. Predictable genetic outcomes don't necessarily create stability if the partners lack commitment to each other and their offspring beyond biological imperatives. For several seconds, Lyra simply stared at him, her patterns pulsing rapidly. Then, unexpectedly, she leaned forward. Elaborate. This concept conflicts with established Cthar social theory. For the next hour, Liam found himself engaged in a surprisingly robust debate about the comparative merits of genetic determination versus emotional bonding. Lyra challenged his assertions aggressively, but seemed genuinely interested in his responses, particularly when he drew parallels to Cthar history before their genetic obsession had taken hold. Your species once valued artistic expression and individual achievement alongside genetic lineage, he pointed out. The historical archives exhibit in the Central Museum displays Cthar poetry from the pre-unification era that celebrates personal choice in bonding. Lyra's patterns dimmed slightly. You visited the historical archives? Few humans show interest in Cthar cultural development. I'm an anthropologist by training, Liam explained. Understanding cultural evolution is my specialty. Something shifted in her demeanor, subtle, but noticeable to Liam's trained eye. A reassessment, perhaps. The remainder of their session felt less like an interrogation and more like an actual exchange, though Liam remained cautious, aware that any information he provided could be used to further the CP agenda. When Lyra departed, promising to return the following day for this social integration phase, Liam immediately checked his secure communicator. Zalter had responded with disturbing information. Liam's genetic profile had triggered special flags in the CP system, marking him for expedited processing and high-level oversight. Whatever made him compatible with Lyra was apparently rare and valuable enough to attract attention from the upper echelons of Cthar authority. 3 days later, Liam found himself dressed in formal attire provided by Lyra, accompanying her to what she described as a minor social gathering of Cthar officials. The reality was a lavish reception in the central administrative tower, attended by dozens of high-ranking Cthar, many of whom openly stared at the human in their midst. "Stay close," Lyra murmured as they entered. "Commander Forlag will be watching. He oversees CP implementations and takes particular interest in high-compatibility matches. Like ours," Liam asked quietly. "Precisely." Her patterns briefly flashed what Liam had come to recognize as concern before studying. He believes the program should be expanded. Before Liam could ask what that meant, they were approached by a powerfully built male Cthar whose scales bore the distinctive crimson markings of military rank. His bioluminescent patterns pulsed with controlled intensity, like banked embers threatening to flare. "Officer Kvex," he said, inclining his head slightly. "This is your human match." His gaze swept over Liam with clinical detachment. "Yes, Commander Forlach." Liam Bennett, Earth linguist and anthropologist. The commander circled Liam slowly. "Unusual genetic markers for a human, particularly in the telomeric regions." He addressed Liam directly. "Your preliminary scans indicate potential stress response anomalies conducive to cross-species genetic work." Liam maintained a neutral expression. "I'm afraid genetics isn't my field, Commander." "No," Forlag agreed, his patterns suggesting amusement. "Your field is language. Words. Slippery things, are they not? Officer Kvex reports your psychological evaluations contain ambiguities, cultural differences in expression, I'm sure," Liam replied smoothly. Forlag's eyes narrowed. "Indeed, cultural differences. The very thing CP was designed to bridge." He turned to Lyra. "Additional loyalty assessments will be necessary. Schedule them immediately." As he moved away to greet other guests, Liam noticed Lyra's patterns had darkened considerably. "What does he mean by loyalty assessments?" he whispered. "More invasive mind probe sessions," she replied tersely, "designed to ensure compliance with program objectives." Throughout the evening, Liam carefully observed the interactions around him, noting the rigid hierarchy evident in every exchange. He also caught fragments of worried conversations, whispered concerns about declining birth rates, failed genetic treatments, and the growing desperation underlying CP. Most revealing was the reaction when another official made a dismissive comment about Liam's presence. "Resorting to human genetic material now, Kvex? How desperate your lineage must be." Lyra's response had been immediate and fierce. "The Bennett subject possesses unique genetic markers beneficial to Cthar adaptive evolution. Commander Forlag himself has acknowledged their significance." Her protective stance had startled Liam, and clearly surprised the other Cthar as well. Later that night, after returning to his apartment, Liam finally connected with Zalter through the secure channel. The Cthar technician's message was alarming. "Discovered anomaly in genetic matching algorithm. System not only seeking reproductive compatibility, targeting specific rare human genetic marker. Marker related to telomere stability and regeneration. Forlag faction believes it holds key to reversing Cthar infertility crisis. You weren't randomly selected. You were hunted." The information confirmed Liam's growing suspicions. He was not simply part of a reproductive program, but a specific target for genetic exploitation. The question remained, why Lyra specifically? Was she merely following orders, or did she have her own agenda? His opportunity to find out came sooner than expected. The following morning, Lyra arrived to inform him of the scheduled loyalty assessments. "Commander Forlag has expedited the process," she said, her patterns indicating stress. "The evaluations will include deep neural scanning." "You mean thought extraction?" Liam said flatly. "Lyra, I know about the telomere marker. I know I was specifically targeted." Her patterns froze, then flared brightly. "Who told you this? Does it matter? What matters is what you and Forlag plan to do with my genetic material." He stepped closer. "And whether you're fully on board with his methods." For several long moments, Lyra remained motionless, her patterns cycling through configurations Liam couldn't interpret. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely audible. Not all Kthar agree with current methodologies. Her eyes met his directly. Breeding programs were supposed to be voluntary, beneficial to both parties. What they become under Forlag's direction is concerning. Then help me understand what's really happening, Liam pressed. Why me specifically? Why you? Lyra's patterns dimmed to a subtle glow. The assessments are scheduled for tomorrow morning. Be ready at 0700. She turned to leave, then paused. Prepare thoroughly. Some questions require careful consideration. The warning was clear. Their conversation was likely monitored, but Lyra had given him what information she could. Something about the assessment tomorrow would be crucial. That night, Zalter sent an urgent message. Forlag accelerating timeline. Suspects resistance. Plans extraction of genetic material with or without cooperation. Evidence needed of hidden agenda to nullify Sci-Fi contract. Liam paced his apartment, mind racing. He needed concrete evidence of Forlag's true objectives and the genetic theory behind the telomere marker to have any chance of exposing the commander and potentially voiding his CP contract. But how to obtain such evidence under constant surveillance? The answer came at precisely 0300 hours when his door slid open to reveal Lyra, dressed in nondescript civilian clothing, her bioluminescent patterns deliberately dimmed. "We have 4 hours," she whispered. "Follow me. Speak to no one." Heart pounding, Liam followed her through service corridors and maintenance shafts, bypassing the usual security checkpoints. They descended deep into the administrative complex, finally reaching a heavily secured archive room that Lyra accessed with multiple authorization codes. Restricted genetic repository, she explained as they entered, contains complete records of the CP program and its true objectives. "Why are you showing me this?" Liam asked as Lyra activated a secure terminal. "Why risk your position?" Her patterns shifted to a configuration he'd never seen before, something almost vulnerable. "Because Forlag doesn't just want to save our species. He wants to control its future." She pulled up classified files, displaying genetic research data. The Kthar infertility crisis isn't just declining birth rates. It's specific genetic degradation. The screen's filled with genetic sequences, population projections, and research notes. Lyra explained rapidly. "Our obsession with genetic purity created a bottleneck effect. Critical adaptive genes are disappearing from our population. The genes that allow for environmental adaptation, immune response diversity, even neurological flexibility, all diminishing with each generation. And my telomere marker," Liam asked, "contains a specific activation sequence that triggers genetic repair mechanisms," Lyra said. "It could potentially reverse the degradation process. But Forlag doesn't want to distribute this widely." She showed him classified directive documents. He plans to create a genetically enhanced Kthar subset, loyal to his faction, who would have reproductive advantage over the general population. "Genetic control of the entire species," Liam murmured. "But why tell me this? Why risk everything?" Lyra's patterns pulsed slowly, deliberately. "Because I carry a recessive gene that makes me particularly susceptible to the degradation pattern." She displayed her own genetic profile. Forlag doesn't know. If his plan succeeds, lineages like mine would be systematically eliminated, deemed unfit under the new paradigm. "So, this is about self-preservation?" Liam asked. "Initially, yes," she admitted. "But the more I researched, the more I questioned our entire approach. Our genetic obsession hasn't saved us. It's accelerated our decline." Her patterns brightened. "And then you arrived, challenging every assumption with your insistence on emotional connection, personal choice, diversity of experience." Liam processed this revelation. "What are you suggesting?" "An alliance," Lyra said. "Forlag is scheduled to announce expanded CP enforcement at the planetary address tomorrow. You, as a successful match, are expected to make a statement of support." Her patterns intensified. "Instead, we expose his true agenda and the suppressed genetic research. Zalter has agreed to leak the data at the precise moment of your address. That's extremely dangerous, Liam noted. Forlag controls security forces. Yes, Lyra agreed, but he doesn't control all Cthar factions. Many are concerned about his increasing power. They just need evidence of his true intentions. They spent the remaining hours downloading critical data and planning their approach. The pretense of a romantic mission was abandoned, replaced by a dangerous but necessary partnership with a common purpose. As they prepared to leave the archive, Liam asked the question that had been bothering him since a revelation. Why did you agree to be matched with me in the first place if you had doubts about the program? Lyra's patterns dimmed slightly. I believed I was serving my species. And, she hesitated, your file indicated someone who might understand complexity, who might see beyond cultural differences, someone who might actually listen. The planetary address was held in the Grand Convocation Hall, broadcast to all Cthar settlements across dozens of worlds. Thousands attended in person, including representatives from every major Cthar lineage and faction. Security was omnipresent but discreet, befitting the ceremonial nature of the event. Commander Forlag took the central platform, his commanding presence amplified by the ceremonial regalia of his rank. His address began with somber statistics about the infertility crisis, building toward his proposed solution: expanded CP enforcement, mandatory genetic screening for all Cthar, and accelerated human integration for compatible subjects. Today, he announced, we demonstrate the success of our approach. Officer Lyra Kvex and her human match, Liam Bennett, represent the future of Cthar adaptive strategy. As planned, Liam was invited to the platform to give brief remarks as the human face of the program. Lyra stood nearby, her patterns carefully controlled to show appropriate official pride. Liam stepped to the podium, acutely aware of billions of Cthar watching across their territories. He began with the expected platitudes about cross-species cooperation, carefully building rapport with the audience. Then, at the predetermined moment, he shifted. The Cthar value truth above all, he said, his voice steady. So truth must guide our path forward. On cue, the massive display screens throughout the hall changed, showing the restricted genetic data that Zalter was feeding into the system. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd as the evidence of genetic degradation, Forlag's selective enhancement plans, and the suppressed research appeared before them. The crisis facing the Cthar isn't just about birth rates, Liam continued. It's about the very genetic foundation of your species, compromised not by outside contamination, but by artificial constraints on genetic diversity. Forlag lunged toward him, but security forces hesitated, uncertain as the damning evidence continued to display on screens throughout the hall. This is treason, he shouted. Arrest him immediately. Lyra stepped forward then, her voice ringing out. The data is authentic, verified through multiple sources. Her patterns blazed brightly, visible to every Cthar present. I stand as witness to its validity and to Commander Forlag's intent to create a genetic elite under his control. More shocking to the Cthar audience than her accusations was what she did next. Lyra accessed a secure terminal and displayed her own genetic profile, highlighting the recessive marker that Forlag's plan would eliminate. I carry the very marker that Forlag's plan would deem unworthy of continuation, she declared, as do many of your lineages. This is not about saving our species. It is about controlling who among us deserves to continue. Chaos erupted. Cthar factions argued vehemently, some calling for immediate arrest of the dissidents, others demanding investigation of Forlag's actions. The commander himself ordered his loyal security forces to seize both Liam and Lyra. As armed officers advanced, Liam stepped forward again, addressing the Cthar audience directly in their own language, without translation assistance. His pronunciation was imperfect but clear, invoking ancient Cthar philosophical principles about collective welfare and ethical leadership. The foundation of Cthar civilization is rational investigation of evidence, he declared. Before you silence those who question, examine what they have revealed. If Commander Forlag's plans serve the common good, they will withstand scrutiny. If not, your entire species deserves to know before irreversible actions are taken. His words struck at the core of Cthar cultural identity, their self-image as a species guided by reason rather than emotion or autocratic control. Several influential lineage representatives moved to intervene, calling for temporary suspension of proceedings pending investigation. A tense standoff ensued, with Forlag security forces facing opposition from moderate factions. Finally, the Central Genetic Council, a body technically superior to military authority in matters of species preservation, asserted control, ordering Forlag detained pending full investigation of the evidence. In the aftermath, the CP program was suspended for comprehensive review. A new research initiative was established, co-led by Lyra, and focused on developing genetic therapies based on Liam's telomere marker, with voluntary participation rather than coercion. Liam was granted full citizenship rights and amnesty, his CP contract formally nullified. He chose to remain on Xylos, not from obligation, but by choice, contributing his expertise to the research effort and exploring his evolving relationship with Lyra. 6 months later, they worked side by side in the new Genetic Diversity Research Center, the former tension between them replaced by mutual respect and the beginning of a genuine connection. What had begun as a forced romantic duty had transformed into something neither could have anticipated, a partnership built on truth, shared purpose, and freely given collaboration. As they analyzed new genetic sequences together, Lyra's patterns glowed with an intensity once reserved for official functions, now expressed freely in Liam's presence. The latest trials show promising results, she noted, displaying the data. The adaptive response in Cthar genetic material exposed to the modified telomere sequence exceeds projections. And participation rates? Liam asked, knowing how important voluntary engagement was to their new approach. Increasing weekly, Lyra confirmed, particularly among younger generations. They seem less constrained by traditional genetic paradigms. Liam nodded, observing how naturally they now work together, their initial roles as controller and controlled long abandoned. Evolution in action, he commented. Cultural as well as genetic. Lyra's patterns shifted to the configuration he now recognized as amusement. Perhaps your human insistence on emotional factors had merit after all. Careful, Liam warned with a smile. That sounds dangerously close to admitting I was right. Her hand briefly touched his, a gesture once unthinkable between their species, now comfortable and meaningful. Let's say we were both partially correct. A satisfactory scientific conclusion. As they returned to their work, Liam reflected on the unlikely path that had brought them here. What had begun with the alarming declaration, "You've been matched with me, human. Your romantic duties start now," had evolved into something neither could have predicted, a genuine partnership of equals, facing an uncertain but shared future together. Their romantic mission had been redefined on their own terms, founded not on obligation but on choice, not on genetic determinism, but on connection forged through shared purpose and growing understanding. The glow of Lyra's patterns reflected off the laboratory surfaces as they worked, no longer signaling dominance or official authority, but something far more meaningful, the light of possibility, of a future neither of them would have chosen initially, but now couldn't imagine abandoning.